Okay, hello again. This is now the Tarot Process Part 7. And I have my notes. Obnoxious, tragedy, insight, card position, Vinny, atmosphere, and point 1. Because this is about the Celtic Cross. And I was going to do it all in one, but I'm going to spread it out and try and do like 1 point per video, to give you time to think about the point and maybe experiment on your own with it. So today is going to be 1 point about the first card, and I've got a second point to make about that, and I'll do that in the next video. Then we'll look at card 2. So I'm going to extend it a bit instead of doing it all in one. And the first point I want to make is, let's say somebody you know is being really difficult and being obnoxious, and they're being overcritical and they're pointing out your faults and your flaws and so on. Maybe it's somebody at work or a friend of yours. So you respond a certain way, you react, maybe you try to avoid them, and so their behaviour creates a certain kind of behaviour and reaction in you. And so maybe you get angry or get annoyed or become defensive or wish things were different depending on how the other person's behaving. So you've got a whole way of acting when you know the person's going to be critical. But then let's say you discover that the person just lost a child. The next time you see them, knowing that they lost a child or there was some other tragedy in their life, you don't react the same way. One little bit of information changes your behaviour, I'm sure. You're going to be more patient, more caring. You're not going to fly off the handle. You're maybe not going to try and avoid them because you can sympathise with, to some extent, with what they went through. So a little bit of information or a little bit of insight into the other person's life and behaviour causes you to behave differently and understand things a different kind of a way. And I think this is important because partly it can mean that this is the value of the tarot, that you pick cards and talk about what the card shows, and that gives the questioner even a little bit of insight into what's going on. And because they've got a little bit more knowledge or insight or understanding, they act differently, they behave differently, they think different thoughts, they get different expectations. And so their life changes. Even it doesn't mean that you've got to give somebody overwhelming, mind-blowing information with every card and every sentence. And it may be that with the tarot, what's important is giving the questioner some broader or new insight into what's going on, so they can see it differently, think about it differently, and ideally make things better for themselves. I can't remember what the next point is. So what I'm going to tell you about the first card, think of it the same way. I'm going to tell you something and think about it for a bit and see how you can apply it. But you're not supposed to remember all this, and the thoughts that you come up with, you're not supposed to commit them to memory. It's a bit, remember Vinny Colaiatra. So he said he would, when he wanted to play something different with drums, he would practice and practice, and then when he felt comfortable with his level of playing, he would forget about it. And maybe 2 or 3 months later, he would realise he was actually playing this thing he had practiced. And I think if we can apply that to the tarot, so you practice something or you think about it and you come up with answers, but you don't try and remember everything. You trust that it's all in your mind anyway, and when it's appropriate, or when it's going to make sense of the question or make sense as part of the answer, you're going to remember it. It's going to come back to you. Okay, the second last word I've got here is atmosphere. imagine if you had, so the first card in the Celtic Cross describes or shows the atmosphere surrounding the question. So what does this mean, or how can we think about the atmosphere? So I was thinking that I used to sell a book by a doctor, and I can't remember his name, but it was a red cover. That's all I can remember. Anyway, he made the point about, let's say somebody has to go to hospital. Let's say you have to go to a hospital and you go on your own. What kind of atmosphere is it you're taking with you or taking into the hospital? Maybe you're anxious, maybe you're afraid, maybe you're expecting the worst, maybe you're annoyed that you've got to go there and stay for a couple of days. But also it can be a bit intimidating because there's you in the room. Let's say there are 2 nurses and 2 doctors. It's 4 against 1. You know, if you may object, but you know, they're going to pat you on the head and tell you to calm down, and we know what we're doing, so trust us. Maybe they're right, maybe they're not, but you can have particular points that you want to make, but it's really difficult to do. So that's the kind of, think about atmospheres in that way. What's the atmosphere about a visit to a hospital? And the reason I mentioned the doctor is because he said the people who get on best in hospital are people who take their extended family with them. So if you're going to hospital and you take 14 family members around you that support, you can have more courage because you know that if you say something, you're going to have supporters who'll back you up. If you're in the room, there's 14 of you, 2 nurses and 2 doctors, it's 14 against 4. So the doctors are going to behave differently, the nurses will behave differently when they're up against 14 people, not just one solitary individual who is afraid. So think about the atmosphere that way. And if you look at a card, and I'm going to talk about the first card and give you the idea that you probably haven't thought of before, that can ideally or will change how you view the card and what sense you make of the first card in the Celtic Cross. And I'm going to give it demonstrations with 3 cards: King of Batons, the 7 of Swords, and the 5 of Coins. Those last 2 because people struggle with those particular cards. So I'm going to switch the camera to up here, pointing down onto the table. So it seems to me to make more sense to show the cards themselves. So I'll see in a moment once I dismantle this camera or the tripod and put it all together over there. Okay, I'll see you in a moment. Okay, this is part 2, kind of. And the reason I wanted to do the camera from the side is because I want to draw a little diagram. Anyway, in a horoscope, this is what I hope you can see that, whether it's going to work. So that's the basic cross in a horoscope, and I'm going to get to other parts of it. But this part here, the vertical line, which looks in its own way like a card, an upright card, as opposed to the one that goes across this way, right? So in a horoscope, this is noon, right? And this is midnight. And that's the point that I want to make, that the first card in a Celtic Cross spread, if you look at it as showing movement from midnight to noon or from noon to midnight, and I'll give you examples with 3 cards of what thoughts you might get or come up with because of this basic idea. Because remember, in the beginning I said a little bit of insight can give you all sorts. It'll change how you think, or it can change how you think and what sense you make of things. So I'm going to look at this idea of the vertical line or the vertical card showing either movement from midnight to noon, and I'm thinking that shows, if the card is upright, you're going from darkness into light. Whereas if the card is upside down, you're going from light into darkness. And that's the basic idea. With the first card in the Celtic Cross, you're dealing with midnight and noon in some way. And think for yourself about what noon represents, because noon is maybe the high point or the best that the card can show. And midnight can be its most hidden qualities or characteristics. Or maybe you've got a hidden strength, but it's hidden, so you don't know it's a strength. So that's my visual aid out the way. Okay, so let's say we do a Celtic Cross, and the first card we get is, and I'm thinking, let's say the question is about, let me just go here. The question's about a relationship, because ideally we know what the question is, or we have a question. So if the first card happens to be the King of Wands upright, and I'm going to show it here, only because it doesn't really matter, why not, but I can't get the program to do picture in picture. Anyway, so you know what the King of Batons looks like. Okay, so if we think this is noon, okay, it's because it's upright, I'm saying we go from darkness into light. So what would that mean for the King of Batons? Maybe it shows that, let's say it's a question about relationship. With the King of Batons as the first card, it can be an indication that you're going to get to know him or her better as time goes by, because they go from darkness into light. So you're going to get to know them better. And maybe that makes you think, and again, you're the reader, and you want to give insight to the questioner. So you don't need to repeat everything that you've ever thought about the particular card. But maybe what comes to mind is, because you're going to know him better, and presumably be able to trust him more as time goes by, be honest with them in the beginning. So if there are cards in the rest of the spread that show dishonesty, probably honesty is the best policy with this King of Batons upright. Or maybe because we go from darkness into light, you're going to see him or her more clearly as time goes by. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you meet somebody and you're totally in love with them, but all you're seeing is yourself. You don't really see the other person. But with the King of Batons upright in the Celtic Cross about the relationship, the longer it goes, the more clearly you're going to see this other individual, and presumably it's going to work. So be honest with the person, I guess, right from the start. There's no need, also because you're going from darkness into light, there's no need to be afraid. Because if you've ever been awake or suddenly at 2 a.m. and it's dark and you're afraid, you know what that's like. But because the card is upright and we're going from darkness into light, I think, and it's a king and upright, I think we can say that there's no need to be afraid when it comes to this particular individual, or there's no need to be afraid with this particular relationship that's going to come up. Okay, I wrote down a few words here. The reason I thought about being afraid was, let's say you've got the 9 of Swords as the foundation card, and that shows the person waking in the middle of the night and having a nightmare. So if the foundation is turns out to be, because we're going to start with all of the cards face down, if the foundation turns out to be the 9 of Swords in the past, then you've had bad experiences in relationships, you've been afraid. There's no need with this particular King of Batons. There's an improvement from the past into the present. If the King of Batons is reversed, on the other hand, then we're going from brightness into darkness, right from noon to midnight. What do we say about this? Maybe what we think, though we don't automatically tell the questioner, maybe we think the longer this relationship goes, the less you can depend on this particular individual, because we're going from light into darkness. So and it can be that you can't, he's not going to be there as time goes by. So either he gets bored and goes elsewhere, or something comes up that he's got to deal with, so he's going to be unavailable for you as time goes by. So again, we're thinking about the future card. This is what will come. So depending on what's there, you may realise that the King of Batons upside down means that he's not going to be able to be there in the future. So don't make long-term plans based on his continued presence. What else did I write? Okay, that was it. I just came up with a couple of thoughts about it to give you a starting point. So let's say we've got that, and let's say the second card, or we do another spread, and the first card we get is the Seven of Swords upright. You know the Seven of Swords. You hate the Seven of Swords. Well, not hate, but people struggle with the Seven of Swords. So if it's upright, we're going from darkness to light. If it's reversed, we're going from light to darkness. So what was this? What could this mean? So, with the Seven of Swords, let's say it's about relationship or about what's something that's not going well. A sword is a weapon. We know this. And maybe we think that it represents an enemy. But because we're going from darkness into light, if the person is afraid about or is concerned about enemies, then who the enemy is going to come clear as time goes by, as we go from darkness into light. And that's one way of making sense of the particular card. The other, I'd like to emphasize, you, the reader, may know this or may think this, but you're not automatically going to tell it to the questioner. But it's more like, okay, let's say that's you. I have to do it here. I think it's in focus. Let's say that's your thinking, right? And then you realize something, and so you go off at a slight tangent, but then you realize something that gets you moving back in that direction. So it's a bit like all these random thoughts that you have are like little twists and turns and branches on the road of your thinking. And it may be that you've got all the little random thoughts that you have, but you still have to answer the question. But your answer is based on multiple, many ideas or many possibilities that you come up with by considering, for instance, that this card goes from darkness into light. So when we find other cards, let's say the final outcome card up here, we can make more sense of it because we've had the idea that the enemy, if there is one, it's going to become more clear who the enemy is as time goes by. And maybe you've got an enemy here, and then let's say you've got the Emperor reversed here as what will come. That can make you think, okay, be careful, because you be careful about who you trust, because and don't take people at face value. So people say things, but make sure they actually mean it, or that they're able to carry through with what they promise. Because we've got the idea, the possibility of people being your enemy in some way here, and this Emperor reversed could be a strong person who has it in for you in some way, and that's what you've got to go through in the future. Okay, I can't remember why I wrote that. The other thing is, okay, yeah, we've got two swords stuck in the ground here. So these two swords can represent strengths or established abilities. And so if we're going from darkness into light, don't underestimate yourself. You've actually got more going for you, the two swords, than you think you have. And you're going to become aware of your inner strength or your outer strength or your ability or your qualifications as time goes on. Whereas if the Seven of Swords is upside down, maybe these two swords are going to fall out. Just looking at the picture, they can fall out. So don't depend on what you've depended on up until now. Or if you depend on tried and true methods, they're not automatically going to work in the future the way they did in the past. The other thing is, sorry, I'm getting mixed up here. Yeah. So if the sword is upright, if the Seven of Swords is upright, we've got the idea of this person who's maybe in the darkness initially, coming into the light and you being more clear about who this person is, or you becoming more clear about your own personality and strengths and behavior. And we can take a look. It's not that this person's not that organized and not that trustworthy, probably. So maybe when it's upright, look for, in the rest of the spread, you look for maybe antidotes to this person here with the Five Swords, who can represent insecurity or rushing or not planning, not taking the time to plan. So maybe if you find a card of stability here, right, so the Emperor's upright, then that's okay. This is like the antidote to this person being whimsical or being uncaring about detail. But with the Emperor in the future, any problem shown by being unprepared or by rushing at things is going to be taken care of by the Emperor. What else did I put? Anyway, okay. Okay, I can't remember what else I was going to say about that. So the third card I got was the Five of Pentacles, and I'm trying to think of things I haven't said before publicly. Anyway, so it's interesting. I think with this one, Five of Pentacles, you've got the people here, but behind them you've got the coins lit up, and they're part of the building. Buildings endure. They go on, they can last for hundreds of years. People don't. So with this particular card, the Five of Pentacles, we've got some kind of contrast between human activity, or not human activity, between the people who come and go, but you've got the values, because it's coins, that go on forever, that have lasting things, that have lasting value or lasting use. The building and the window, keeping out the cold, and the people forced to trudge through the snow. So somehow, can't remember what I wrote here. Okay. So if the Five of Pentacles is upright, what the people are moving. I think we could say that you go from darkness to light. You go from the people struggling at the moment, but they're going to move out the picture, right? And what you're going to be left with is the stability and the lasting value of the building with the coins in it. So if you've got a choice between short-term benefit and long-term solution or long-term value, go with, because it's darkness into light, go with the long-term value represented by the coins in the window of the building. Whereas if the card is upside down, then long-term value isn't going to work. It's going to change. Circumstances will change. It's a bit like, remember Betamax and VHS for video, and how I think Sony went with Betamax and everybody else went with VHS, and VHS won for video tapes, and Betamax just failed. And it can be that you think Betamax is going to work long term, but it doesn't. Something else takes over, or something else has great success, which causes the end of in the Betamax, or the end of what you had put your faith in, or what you put your confidence in. Okay, that's. I can't think of anything else to say at the moment. So let me stop at this point. See what you try this for yourself, because the basic idea is noon and midnight. Can you see that? Noon and midnight. And when the card is upright, you're going from midnight to noon. When it's reversed, you're going from noon to midnight. And what ideas would you have about a card and its possible meaning or influence or strength or weaknesses, depending on if it's upright or reversed at the beginning of a Celtic Cross? Not forgetting that we need to know it's easier to do, it's better to do if you've got a question. So maybe you come up with 3 questions. What's going to happen in this relationship? What's going to happen at work? And what's the purpose of my life? Those are 3 general types of questions. But maybe what you do is, okay, what's going to happen in my relationship? First card is the 5 of Pentacles upright. What does that mean? Upside down, what does that mean? What's going to happen at work? Upright and reverse. What's my purpose in life? Here it's to find eternal values with the building, for instance. Okay, that's it for the moment. Thanks for watching, and see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.